She cheated first, but when he struck back, she wasn't ready for what came next. Jason gave her everything, his love, his trust, a family. But when he found out about the affair, he didn't explode. He planned, quietly, strategically, cold as ice. While she thought she was winning, he was taking back his life. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's about what happens when a husband becomes the storm. If you've ever been cheated on, if you've ever been underestimated, this story is for you. Like, comment, and subscribe to Cheating Stories 7, where every lie has a consequence and every betrayal has a reckoning. Now, let's dive into She Cheated First but Couldn't Handle My Revenge. Growing up, I believed in fairy tales. Not the kind with dragons or castles, but the quiet ones. The ones where two people fall in love, marry, and grow old together. That was what my parents showed me every day. They weren't flashy. There were no grand gestures, just a steady, honest kind of love. The kind you feel in the silence between conversations. I carried that image like a compass. When I met Claire in college, she was nothing like me. Where I was reserved, she was radiant. I liked quiet nights and books. She thrived in noise, in crowds, in light, and somehow we worked. She pulled me out of my shell. I grounded her when she spun too fast. We were opposites, but magnetically so. By the time we graduated, I was certain she was it. We married under an old oak tree in her grandmother's backyard, surrounded by friends and family who saw us as something timeless. The speeches were full of hope, and so were we. We settled into a modest home in Austin, Texas, started our careers, had two beautiful daughters, Maya and Grace. Claire kept her maiden name. I respected it. She said it reminded her of who she was before becoming a wife and mother. The early parenting years were a blur, sleepless nights, sticky fingers, first steps, and late-night lullabies. But even in the chaos, we were happy. Claire worked part-time as a marketing consultant. I taught high school science. We made it work. We had traditions. Sunday pancakes, Friday movie nights, summer camping trips. On paper, we were the family people envied. Friends said we were balanced, stable, admired, but they couldn't see what was quietly shifting beneath it all. Claire started going out more, book club, then girls' night, then work dinners that ran later than usual. She locked her phone, smiled less at home, laughed more when she talked about people I didn't know. We argued never loudly, disagreed always with resolution, and I chalked it up to life, stress, kids, schedules. I told myself we were fine because I still loved her, and I believed that mattered most. But I remember the moment things truly changed. Claire walked past me in the hallway, dressed up for another networking mixer. Perfume I didn't recognize, a half smile, a kiss on the cheek, and a soft, "Don't wait up." I didn't. That night, I poured a glass of bourbon and watched our wedding video alone. Her laugh echoed through the speakers. The same laugh that used to warm me now felt like it belonged to someone else. And for the first time, I realized maybe the story I believed in had started to become fiction. It started with a vibration. Claire had left her phone on the kitchen counter, a rare thing. She was upstairs putting Grace to bed, and the phone buzzed once, then again. The name lit up the screen. Illy, no last name, just Illy. 3 messages stacked one after another. "Miss you already. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." My chest tightened. I stared at the glowing screen like it might vanish, like this could somehow still be a mistake. But I knew better, and yet I still unlocked it. Her passcode, still the same, and just like that, everything changed. There it was, months of messages, photos, jokes, plans, hotel confirmations, whispers I was never meant to hear, and a line I would never forget. "Don't worry, Jason won't find out. He trusts me too much." I stopped breathing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run upstairs and drag the truth out of her with every broken word. But instead, I sat. Frozen, the life I thought I was living, the wife I thought I knew, all of it collapsed in a matter of seconds. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, then sat at the kitchen table and waited. 15 minutes later, she came downstairs, barefoot, humming, hair pulled back. She didn't see the war in my eyes. "Hey," she smiled. "Everything okay?" I didn't answer, not yet. I just stared. "I saw your phone." The smile faded. Her body froze just slightly, but her voice didn't break, not even a crack. "Oh," she said, sitting down across from me. I guess we should talk. I let out a sound I didn't recognize, a bitter laugh, the kind that only happens when a part of you dies. I wasn't looking for anything serious, she began. It just happened. You lied to me, I said. I didn't mean to. But you did over and over. Still no tears, no apology. Instead, she said something I never thought I'd hear. I think we should consider an open marriage. I blinked. What? I still love you, Jason. I love our life, our kids, but I need something more, something different. Maybe if we redefined our relationship, we could both be happy. You're asking me to be okay with you sleeping with another man. I'm saying maybe we don't have to feel trapped. Trapped. I looked around. The photo frames, the toys on the floor, the school calendar pinned to the fridge, and I felt cold. So cold, that night I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I moved to the guest room, closed the door, stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering, how did the woman I married become a stranger who wants to share me? The next morning, I called in sick, not because I was coughing, but because I couldn't breathe. I dropped the girls off like usual, didn't make eye contact with Claire, didn't say goodbye, then I just drove. I didn't know where I was going until I found myself parked in front of a law office. Foster and Tate Family Law. I didn't plan to be here, but something deeper than logic moved my hand to open that door. 10 minutes later, I sat across from a woman named Rachel Foster. Sharp eyes, calm voice, the kind of person who doesn't waste words. I told her everything, not as a victim, not as a man scorned, just as someone who didn't know where else to turn. She didn't interrupt, didn't flinch. Then she leaned forward and said the words that hit harder than any betrayal. Jason, if you file for divorce in Texas, the court doesn't care about infidelity. I blinked. What? It's a no-fault state. The judge won't factor in cheating unless there's abuse or harm to the kids. I stared. She could get the house, the kids, primary custody. You might get weekends and a bill. My stomach dropped. If you try to kick her out, Rachel added, you risk a protective order. She just has to say she doesn't feel safe. I shook my head. This can't be real. It's the law, she said quietly. My voice cracked. So I'm screwed. She didn't flinch. You have two options, react emotionally and lose everything, or stay calm, stay smart, and prepare. Prepare for what? She met my eyes. To win. Those two words hit me harder than the betrayal. You don't need to make a move today, she said. But if you want custody, your house, and your dignity, then you need to document every bedtime story, every dentist appointment, every proof that you're the one holding this family together. I didn't say anything for a long time. Then finally, okay, what's step one? Rachel leaned back satisfied. Stay, watch, record, don't flinch. As I left her office, I didn't feel strong. I felt numb, but also sharper. Something inside me had snapped, not in anger, in focus. That night, I smiled at my daughters, kissed their foreheads, folded laundry, read bedtime stories like nothing had changed. And while Claire scrolled her phone on the couch, I watched her from across the room, not as her husband, but as the man who was about to take his life back. Claire waited until the girls were asleep. We sat at opposite ends of the dining table. The dishwasher hummed in the background. I drank a beer slowly, staring into the wood grain. She cleared her throat. Jason, I meant what I said. I think an open marriage could work. I didn't look up. You've already been acting like we're in one, I said. So why ask now? She flinched at the tone, but she didn't stop. It's not about betrayal, it's about needs. I love you. I always have, but I also need something different. Different, I said. You mean a man who isn't me? She looked down. I still want to be your wife. I want this family, but I want to explore what else is out there. Explore, she said it like this was some kind of vacation. You're saying we keep the house, the kids, the routines, but you sleep with someone else on the side, and I just smile and nod. It doesn't have to be like that. You could see people too. I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. You're unbelievable. She leaned in. I'm not trying to hurt you, Jason. I just need to feel alive again. He saw me. He made me feel like a woman again. And what have I been making you feel all these years? I asked, my voice low. She didn't answer. The silence stretched. I want us to work, she whispered. But not if it means either of us feels trapped. Trapped, that word again. I stood and walked to the window, looked out into the night. The neighborhood was still. Our daughters were asleep upstairs, and here she was negotiating her freedom like a business deal. "You think this is sustainable?" I said. "Us pretending nothing's wrong while you sneak out to Ellie's bed twice a week. It's not sneaking if we're honest." I turned slowly. "You think the girls won't notice? You think I'll still sit across from you at breakfast like a husband, while you wipe his scent off your skin?" Her voice cracked. "I'm trying, Jason, I am, but you've changed too. You've become distant, cold." "No," I said. "I became a father, a provider. You wanted fun. I was trying to keep us afloat." She reached across the table. "Let me make it up to you. Come upstairs tonight, please." I stared at her hand, then pulled mine back. "Not like this." That night, I moved her clothes to the basement. The next morning, she woke up to find her closet empty. She screamed. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood in the doorway. "You want an open marriage," I said. "Let's start with separate rooms." From that day forward, we became ghosts in the same house. Two names on a mortgage, two strangers co-parenting. She got her freedom, and I got the cold, hard clarity of a man who had nothing left to lose. Life didn't explode. It froze. The days that followed were quiet, not peaceful, just quiet in all the wrong ways. Claire and I moved around each other like distant co-workers managing a daycare. No yelling, no apologies, just silence. She moved into the basement without argument, hung up curtains, added candles, as if turning exile into choice made it easier to swallow. She started making my favorite meals again. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, steamed peas. I ate them. I didn't say a word. The girls noticed. Of course they did. Meyer asked, "Why is Mom sleeping downstairs?" I told her we needed more space. She didn't believe me, but she didn't ask again. At night, Claire would creep back into our bed when she thought I was asleep. Her hand would reach for mine beneath the blanket. I'd pull away. She never said anything. Neither did I. We became professionals at silence. Polite ghosts. A marriage turned into maintenance. One evening after dinner, I was reading to the girls when Claire stood in the hallway. She watched us for a long time, arms crossed, eyes glassy. "I miss this," she said. I didn't answer. Later, she tried again. "Jason, I'm still your wife." I turned the page in the book, didn't even glance at her. That night, I heard her crying downstairs. Still, I said nothing. I woke early the next morning, ran until my legs burned, lifted weights in the garage, built lists, routines, discipline. If she was coping through escape, I'd cope through focus. I stopped reacting, stopped explaining, stopped hoping. I watched. I listened. I prepared, because now it wasn't about feelings anymore. It was about control and the beginning of a quiet storm she wouldn't see coming. The first morning I ran, my body fought me. The cold air scraped my lungs. My legs felt like anchors. My mind screamed to turn around, but I kept going because stopping meant staying in that house, and I couldn't take the silence anymore. I ran at 5 a.m. while the streets were empty, while the world still slept. It was the only time that felt truly mine. By the end of the first week, I was doing 3 miles. By the third week, 6. The pain faded. The clarity sharpened. I dropped weight. My jawline reappeared. My back straightened. My silence became strategy. And every morning as the sky turned blue behind me, I reclaimed something I had forgotten, myself. One Saturday, while Claire was out, I took the girls to an RV expo. At first, it was just for fun, but watching them crawl into bunk beds, squealing at the tiny kitchen, imagining adventures on the road, I saw it. A way out, Claire had always hated camping. Said it was too messy, too wild. I used to agree. Now, it sounded like freedom. For the next month, I ran numbers, built budgets, scanned listings. Then I found it. A gently used 37-foot Grand Design Transcend. Bunk beds, double bed, 2 TV, enough space for a second chance. I paired it with a solid GMC 2500 HD diesel crew cab, bought from a retired couple heading to Europe. $80,000. Paid in full, no loans, no shared title. This wasn't an impulse, it was a declaration. When I pulled into the driveway with the trailer, the girls exploded with excitement. They danced in the driveway, gave names to the beds, mapped out imaginary trips. Claire stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You bought this without asking." I didn't know I needed permission anymore. Her jaw tightened. So you're just going to take the kids and drive off? I'm taking them on a trip. You're welcome to join or not. She didn't answer, didn't need to. That night I sat alone inside the trailer. The AC humming, the girls laughing outside. I cracked a cold beer, let the silence settle around me. I wasn't running away from something broken. I was driving toward something better. The day we left, Claire wasn't home. No tears, no goodbye scene, just a quiet note on the kitchen table. We're heading south for the week, back Sunday, Jason. The girls packed their bags with more joy than I'd seen in months. Snacks, pajamas, books. They laughed while folding blankets and arguing about who would get the top bunk. To them, it was a vacation. To me, it was a beginning. We drove for hours, windows down, music loud. I watched them in the rearview mirror, hair flying, mouths full of gummy worms, voices off-key but alive. When we reached the state park, they jumped out of the truck before I could even kill the engine. They ran toward the lake, arms wide, shoes forgotten, and I just stood there breathing, really breathing. We hiked quiet trails that twisted through tall pine trees. We roasted marshmallows until they caught fire and laughed like we hadn't in years. We sat by the fire pit telling silly stories, inventing ghost tales just scary enough to make them squeal. For the first time in a long time, I felt present, whole, free. One night after they had fallen asleep curled up in their bunks, I sat outside beneath a sky full of stars. The world was still. No ringing phones, no accusations, no walking on eggshells, just peace. I looked toward the trailer and whispered to no one. This is what life's supposed to feel like. The next morning, Meyer asked casually, "Why didn't Mom come?" I paused, then said gently, "She had something else planned, but she knows we're having a great time." She nodded, didn't press. They were adjusting faster than I thought. Maybe, so was I. That trip didn't just heal us. It reminded me of everything I was still capable of giving, even without her. Especially without her. While we camped under the stars, Claire sat alone. She walked into a quiet house, saw the note on the table. We're heading south for the week, back Sunday, Jason. No fight, no argument, no warning, just absence. She stood there for a while, holding the note, then picked up her phone, called Scott. "They left without me," she snapped. "What am I supposed to do?" Scott didn't say what she wanted to hear. "You blew it," he said. "You better hope he comes back with the kids. If not, you're totally screwed." Then he hung up. No comfort, no reassurance, just reality. Claire stared at the phone, then the doorway, then the empty chairs at the table. She had always assumed she was the center of the house, the core of the family, the one they all revolved around. But the house didn't collapse when she left. It kept going. Jason kept going. That night, she cooked dinner for no one, cleaned a spotless kitchen, scrolled through old photos until her eyes blurred. When Jason posted a photo, him and the girls smiling at a waterfall, something cracked. That should have been me. She had told herself it wasn't serious, that Elise Scott, none of them meant anything, that she could have both worlds and control the outcome. But Jason wasn't calling. The girls weren't texting. No one needed her, she whispered to herself. I didn't think he'd actually leave, but he had, not with rage, not with threats, with silence. That's what scared her most. Claire didn't expect it to feel like this. She had always believed she was in control. She made the choices. She broke the rules. She set the terms, but now she stood outside the very life she once ruled and watched it keep moving without her. It started when Scott said it casually. "So your husband and kids went camping," he said, flipping through his phone. "Yeah," she answered a little too quickly. "Why didn't you go?" She hesitated. "I didn't agree with the decision." Scott raised an eyebrow. "So, you're mad he took the girls somewhere fun?" She didn't respond. He kept going. "You told him you needed freedom. He gave it to you, and now you're angry." She glared at him. "You think he's seeing someone?" Scott shrugged. "Maybe. Would it bother you if he was?" Claire didn't answer. That night she couldn't sleep. Her mind played scenes that didn't exist. Jason holding someone else's hand. Her daughters calling another woman's name. Laughter echoing through a camper she wasn't invited into. She had told herself she didn't need him, that he was safe, predictable, permanent, but now he was different, stronger, quieter, smarter. And for the first time since it all began, Claire realized something painful. She had started the game, but Jason, Jason might be the one winning it. I met Diana by accident. It started with a local cycling club. I joined to keep my sanity, something to fill the long, hollow hours when the girls were at school and the silence at home felt heavier than bricks. I wasn't looking for anyone, but then, there she was, tall, strong, confident without being loud. There was something about her, a calm, a steadiness. She didn't flirt, she listened. Her smile was easy, her laugh was low, and when she talked to me, it wasn't as a broken man or some sad story. It was just a conversation. We rode side by side every Saturday morning. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't, and that was the first thing I liked about her. The silence between us didn't feel awkward, it felt earned. Diana had a daughter too, Matilda, 4 years old, all curls and curiosity. She understood what it meant to rebuild something that had been torn down. One evening, after a long ride, we sat on a park bench sipping lukewarm Gatorade. "You're a good dad," she said. I laughed. "How would you know?" "I hear it, the way you talk about them, the way you pause when you say their names." I didn't reply, not because I didn't have words, but because that kind of compliment meant something now. We didn't rush. A coffee turned into a lunch turned into a walk turned into a weekend hike with our kids. Then, one day, I invited her and Matilda on a camping trip. She hesitated at first, but Matilda's squeal of excitement made her smile and say yes. That trip changed everything. Watching Maya and Grace teach Matilda how to make s'mores, seeing Diana braid Grace's hair while Maya and Matilda made up silly songs, it didn't feel awkward. It felt like possibility, not a replacement, not a rebound, a future. I never told Claire, not because I was hiding anything, but because, for once, I didn't owe her my joy. We lived in the same house, but we no longer lived the same life. Claire noticed the change first. Before she could admit it, I came home later. I smiled more. I stopped asking where she went, and I didn't care who she went with. She hovered in the kitchen sometimes, offering to chop vegetables or stir sauce. Small gestures, hoping they'd mean something again, but they didn't. One night while the girls were brushing their teeth, she tried. "Jason, are we really going to keep doing this?" I didn't turn from the sink. Doing what? Living like strangers. I dried my hands, turned to meet her eyes. "You made your choice, Claire. I'm just learning how to live with it." She stepped closer. "I still love you." I raised an eyebrow. "You also loved your boyfriend, or should I say, boyfriends." She flinched. "That's not fair. Neither was the marriage." She went quiet. I walked past her, up the stairs into the girls' room, and read bedtime stories like nothing had happened. She didn't follow. Later that night, she knocked gently on my office door. "I miss us," she said. I didn't look up. "That version of us doesn't exist anymore." Her voice was soft. "Why won't you touch me?" I finally met her gaze, not with hatred, not even with anger, just emptiness. "Because I don't feel anything when you try, and I refuse to pretend." She stood there a moment, then left. The emotional cord between us wasn't fraying anymore. It had already snapped. Claire started changing. Not in truth, not in loyalty, but in effort. She began cooking more, staying home more, laughing louder at the kids' jokes, sitting closer on the couch, like proximity could rewind betrayal. I saw it all, but I didn't react because it wasn't guilt. It was fear of being replaced. One night she wore that black dress, the one from our 4th anniversary. She lit candles, grilled steaks, poured red wine. "Old time's sake," she whispered. I sat across from her, calm, unmoved. She reached for my hand across the table. "We don't have to start over," she said softly. "Let's just pause, no more open marriage, just you and me." I looked at her hand in mine. "Are you done seeing him?" I asked. She hesitated. I pulled away. "That's what I thought." She stood, suddenly flustered. "You're seeing someone, aren't you?" I didn't answer. Her eyes widened. "That's it, isn't it? You're calm because you've moved on." I stayed seated, still. "You wanted freedom," I said. "Now you're upset because I opened my own door." She sat back down, the wind knocked from her voice. "This isn't what I wanted." I leaned in slightly, low, firm. "No, you just never thought I'd stop chasing you." She looked at me for a long time, really looked, and I could see it in her eyes. She finally believed me. But belief comes too late. The trust was gone. The draw gone, the spark, long dead, only ashes now. If we were going to live like strangers, we were going to pay like strangers too. I was done funding Claire's freedom. Done buying groceries for a woman who spent her nights elsewhere. Done being the quiet provider while she played pretend. So one Saturday night after the girls were asleep, I poured myself a beer, then handed Claire a glass of wine. She raised an eyebrow. A peace offering. No, I said, a conversation. She sat cautiously. Need to talk about money. I slid a notepad across the table, neat, color-coded, already calculated. I've opened a separate account, I said. My paycheck goes there now. Claire blinked. I'll keep covering half the mortgage and all camper expenses, but everything else we split 50-50. Her voice tightened. You know I don't make as much as you do. Then get a better job, I said flatly. She stared at me. You're punishing me. No, I said, taking a sip. I'm protecting myself. She looked away. I'm not paying for gas you burn driving to him. I'm not buying wine for date nights I'm not invited to. I thought we were moving forward, she said quietly. We're not, I replied. We're co-parents, nothing more. She offered to take on more housework, more errands, to balance the load. I shook my head. This isn't about chores, it's about accountability. The next morning, I emailed her a full spreadsheet, auto-synced, shared calendar, clear categories. There was no venom in it, no anger, just math and a single message in the footer. This is who we are now. Scott never thought it would get this real. He liked the thrill, the secrecy, the flirty texts at midnight, the stolen afternoons in cheap motels. He liked Claire because she was convenient. Exciting, married, she went home to her husband. He kept his freedom, no mess, no strings, no risk. Until now she was showing up with overnight bags, leaving toothbrushes in his bathroom, talking about us like it was a long-term plan. One night, as Claire poured herself a glass of wine in his kitchen, Scott finally cracked. Claire, what exactly is going on with you and Jason? She smiled faintly. He's distant, cold, but I think he still loves me. Scott's eyes narrowed. Has he touched you lately? She shook her head. Scott exhaled. Do you think he knows about us? Claire shrugged. He saw the messages months ago. Scott rubbed his temples, and he's okay with it. He's strategic. He doesn't yell, he just watches. Scott's jaw tightened. Claire, if he's really done, you can't stay here forever. She blinked. Why not? Scott didn't sugarcoat it. Because I'm not trying to play husband. This, he gestured around the room, was fun, but it's not a life. Claire stared at him. You said you cared about me. I do, but not like that. He paused. I don't want to raise someone else's kids. I don't want a custody schedule. And I sure as hell don't want to be the guy you run to because the other man finally walked away. Silence. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just stood there, like a woman who finally understood the man she thought was a backup. Was just a detour. And now, even the detour was over. The decision wasn't impulsive. I had waited, observed, given Claire every opportunity to change. She didn't, so I did. My attorney handed me the final papers on a Thursday. All it needs now, she said, is delivery. We chose Saturday morning. The girls would be at a birthday party. Claire would be home alone. At 10:42 a.m., she opened the front door. A woman stood there. Jeans, navy blazer, ID badge clipped to her belt. Good morning. Are you Claire Walker? Yes. The woman handed over a thick brown envelope. You've been served. Snap, one photo for the record, then she turned and walked away. Claire stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the envelope like it might explode in her hands. Inside was everything: custody terms, asset division, financial boundaries, visitation schedules. Every line was clear, every term fair, but not soft. She walked back inside, placed the envelope on the dining table, and sat in the same chair where she once surprised me with birthday cake. This time, she cried. She didn't open it for 3 hours. When she finally did, she whispered to the empty room, "He really did it." And just like that, the walls she had leaned on, the ones built from comfort, assumption, control, began to crack. She poured herself a glass of water. Her hands shook. For so long, she thought I wouldn't go through with it. That I'd flinch, that I'd forgive, that I'd fold. But now, she wasn't the wife, she wasn't the partner. She was just another name on a legal document. Labeled respondent. Claire stared at the divorce papers for a long time. The words blurred together. Dissolution, custody, division of assets. Her eyes stopped on one line. Primary custody awarded to Jason Walker. Her breath caught. She had always assumed, no matter how messy it got, the kids would stay with her. Jason would move out, pay support, see them on weekends. That was the script she believed in. But now, she wasn't even sure where she'd live next month. With shaking hands, Claire picked up her phone and called her attorney, Claire Barnett, straight to voicemail. I got the papers, she whispered. He's serious. He's actually divorcing me. She hung up, then walked to the hallway mirror. The woman staring back didn't look familiar, not the confident wife, not the perfect mother, just someone who had gambled too much and lost. Later that afternoon, the lawyer called back. Claire, Barnett said gently, we need to talk. Claire sat on the floor, back against the wall, clutching the phone with both hands. You're in a difficult position, Barnett continued. Jason's case is strong. You've been out of the house, inconsistent with the girls, and there's documented evidence of the affair. Claire's voice cracked. Isn't that just hearsay? No, there are photos, texts, witnesses, a paper trail. What do I do? You can fight it, Barnett said softly, but it won't go well. Or you can negotiate terms now and retain what dignity you have left. Claire didn't respond. Tears slid down her cheeks. She tasted salt and silence. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. I believe you, Barnett said, but believing you doesn't win in court. That night, Claire didn't eat, didn't shower, didn't text Scott. She sat at the kitchen table alone, staring out the window into nothing. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel powerful. She didn't feel desired. She didn't feel anything except regret, and regret is the kind of companion that never leaves. I knew the custody battle would be the most important war I'd ever fight. Not for revenge, not to punish Claire, but to protect my daughters, so I prepared. Every school event I attended, every dentist appointment I scheduled, every bedtime story I read, I documented it all. Photos, receipts, emails, proof of presence. I wasn't just being a father. I was building a case. Claire had no idea how far ahead I'd been thinking. Her lawyer walked in assuming this would be routine. Standard, default, because mothers win, right? Not this time. Rachel, my attorney, was surgical. She's been emotionally absent. Let the facts say it. We won't need to raise our voices. And the facts, they were loud. Claire missed parent-teacher meetings, forgot recital dates, showed up late for pickups. She had overnight visits at Scott's apartment, while the girls were home with me. During mediation, her attorney spoke first. Claire has a demanding job. She contributes. She loves her children. Rachel responded calm and exact. She also made time for weekly meetups with her lover for over 2 years. That shows us her priorities. Claire squirmed. Then came the evidence, photos, texts, screenshots. One photo showed her sipping wine at an art lounge. The same night she told Maya she was working late. There was silence in the room. You could feel it shift. Claire looked at me then, her eyes pleaded. But I didn't flinch, because this wasn't about pain anymore. This was about stability, consistency, safety. The judge saw it too. When the ruling came, it was clean. Final, primary custody awarded to Jason Walker. Visitation for Claire twice a month, supervised if needed. Conditional on consistency. Outside the courtroom, she sat down on a bench, frozen, wordless. I didn't walk away in triumph. I walked away holding the future. The one I had built brick by brick, while she tore holes in the foundation. For years, I had been invisible. Now, I was undeniable. Claire showed up at my home office doorway late one evening. The girls were brushing their teeth. I was reviewing emails, calm, focused, settled. She stood there in silence, arms crossed, eyes tired, not angry, just worn. Jason, can we talk? I didn't look up. It's a little late for that, isn't it? I don't want a divorce, she said softly. I want us to be a family again. I sighed, closed the laptop slowly. A year ago, I said, I would have given anything to hear that. I looked her in the eye. But now, I'm just trying to keep things peaceful for the girls. I've changed, she whispered. No, Claire, you got caught. That's not the same thing. She stepped closer. I'll stop seeing Scott. We can do counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Except, I said, you didn't stop when I begged you to. You didn't stop when I was breaking. She flinched. And now that it's slipping away, now you want redemption. Her eyes welled up. I still love you. I shook my head slowly. You love what I gave you. You miss the safety, the man who carried the weight while you wandered. Her voice dropped. If I give him up, would you come back to me? I looked at her, truly looked. You're asking me to forget years of betrayal like it was just a phase. I made a mistake. No, Claire, you made a lifestyle. She said nothing. Outside, the girls' laughter echoed down the hallway. Claire knelt beside my chair. Please, she whispered. Don't let this be the end. I stood up, walked past her, quiet, calm, because it already was. Healing didn't happen overnight, but with Diana, it felt possible. After the custody case settled and Claire moved out, the house finally breathed again. No tension, no silent battles, no walking on eggshells. The girls adjusted faster than I expected. They missed their mom, yes, but they weren't confused. They knew who packed their lunches, who braided their hair before school, who showed up for their plays, who made them feel safe, and they adored Diana. At first, she was just Dad's friend. Polite, kind, present, but then she became something more, the one who made pancakes on Saturdays, who sat through spelling tests, who danced barefoot in the kitchen. Diana never tried to replace Claire. She didn't have to. She simply showed up, fully, consistently. One night after a long day at the lake, we sat around the fire pit in the camper. The girls roasted marshmallows. Matilda curled into Diana's lap, half asleep. I looked at them, all of them, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Diana leaned into me and whispered, "You're a good father." I didn't respond right away, just kissed her forehead, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving. I was living, and this wasn't a rebound. It wasn't revenge. It was real. It was earned. And it was worth everything it took to get here. I saw them last weekend. Jason, Diana, the girls, walking down Main Street, ice cream in hand, sunlight dancing through their laughter. Even Matilda clung to Jason's arm like she had always belonged there. That was supposed to be my life. I stood across the street, half hidden behind a parked car, watching the family I used to belong to someone else now. Jason looked lighter, freer, like the man I had forgotten he could be. Diana didn't look like a threat. She looked like the missing piece. I walked home alone. The apartment was cold, quiet, half furnished, half forgotten. Scott hadn't called in weeks. My parents barely text anymore. Even my girls, polite, distant. They visit twice a month. They tell me about hikes, new games in the camper, how Diana makes the best pancakes. They smile, but not the way they used to. That sparkle I once gave them. Someone else does now. I sat at the edge of my bed, scrolling through old photos, Christmas mornings, birthday candles, Jason holding Meyer on his shoulders, me braiding Grace's hair. Diana wasn't in those memories, but she's in their present, maybe, even their future, I whispered into the dark. I didn't think he'd actually let me go, but he had, and now I wasn't the wife. I wasn't even the villain. I was just a name on a custody calendar. Twice a month, every other weekend. Regret is a quiet companion. It doesn't scream. It just sits beside you, watching the life you lost, walk by on a sunny afternoon without looking back. So that's how it ends. She cheated first, but couldn't handle my revenge. She wanted freedom, but never thought he'd use that same freedom to leave her behind. She expected an open marriage. He gave her open consequences. Now she's a visitor in the life she used to own, and the man she thought would never leave walked away with the kids, with peace, and with someone who truly sees him. Betrayal has a price, and sometimes revenge doesn't come with yelling. It comes with letting go. What would you have done in Jason's shoes? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Cheating Stories 7, where the cheaters lie and the betrayed rise.